Well, at the center of the 2-year Russia investigation is the Fusion GPS dossier. Hard to remember now, but it was originally compiled as opposition research by the Hillary Clinton for President campaign. It was then passed around to journalists and lawmakers and finally released on BuzzFeed without its contents being verified. Despite that, the dossier and its allegations have become more important than America's entire middle class. So the question is, with 2 years of thinking about it and poking around in the efforts of every news organization in Washington to verify it or not, how much of the dossier wound up being true? Molly Hemingway has been following this. She's senior editor at The Federalist. We're happy to have her tonight. So, Molly, I just want to go through a couple of the big claims in this, and you tell me if this happened or not. So the first was Michael Cohen's trip to Prague. Remember the famous trip to Prague?
This is absolutely key. We're told that Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal attorney, went to Prague, had a secret meeting with the Duma's Konstantin Kosachev, that they discussed the collusion arrangement, and that it went really. And that this was a really important thing. In fact, not only did that meeting not take place, there's no evidence that the meeting took place, there's no evidence that Michael Cohen has ever been to Prague.
But that was repeated as fact repeatedly.
Well, in fact, in just a few months ago, 7 months ago, I think there was a news report that falsely claimed that the Mueller team had evidence that that secret meeting had taken place. It is just interesting to note, since we are actually in the sentencing phase and we're dealing with sort of some resolution here, it wasn't even mentioned by Bob Mueller or anyone else who's going after
they would know.
Cohen.
One of the things that always struck me about the dossier was it accused people of crimes, American citizens of crimes, and one of them was Carter Page, who was described in effect as a mastermind, Russian spy.
Carter Page, again, was all over the dossier. And it was so important. The dossier was viewed so favorably by our federal government. They used this to secure a wiretap against him. They portrayed him as a mastermind spy who was setting up all sorts of important meetings and arranging, again, collusion. We were told that he had got a stake in a large Russian oil company in exchange for the collusion. These meetings that we were told took place in the dossier, there's no evidence that any of them happened. And it's interesting to note that Carter Page was surveilled for an entire year by our government and has not been charged with any crime, despite being portrayed as the central linchpin of the collusion theory.
But I do think it destroyed his life, so there's that.
Yeah.
Now, at the very center of this were the salacious claims that Trump was caught doing things with hookers, and he was subject to blackmail as a result of this. Did that happen?
Right. So this was what made it so interesting and what made the journalists so excited when the dossier was first published. Not just the tale of the prostitutes at the Moscow hotel, but we were told that Russia had all sorts of compromising information on Donald Trump and that he would be compromised and blackmailed by this. Now, you can look at his record over the last 2 years and see that if Russia has anything compromising on him, they should have deployed it while he was going after them in such an aggressive fashion in foreign policy, and they haven't done anything of the kind. There is no evidence to support this, but a lot of people are, in fact, truthers on this.
Yeah. Meanwhile, as Victor Davis Hanson just pointed out, the one thing they care about is energy, and America is now the world's largest oil producer, energy producer, so we haven't helped them too much. The Trump Towers in Moscow, you hear that to this day.
So you need to have business interests in order to have this collusion theory make sense. The dossier said a bunch of actually kind of contradictory things, that Trump was very interested in a business deal in Russia, and also that he'd been offered sweetheart deals. Well, if he'd been offered sweetheart deals, I think we can reasonably assume he would have taken them. There's no evidence he has ever successfully accomplished any business relationship in Russia.
And finally, and this claim, again, persists to this day, that Manafort manipulated WikiLeaks in order to hurt Hillary Clinton, and I think it's basically wrecked Roger Stone's life, this claim from the dossier. Is it true? Do we know that that's true? So
the dossier claimed that Manafort was really the one in charge of the entire collusion theory, that in fact Carter Page was working on his orders. There's no evidence that they even met, that we were told that Manafort was the one who came up with the whole WikiLeaks idea. There's no evidence, and we have a lot of court filings where if there were any evidence of this, you know darn well that this would have been mentioned in any of these filings. Now, the whole genius of this dossier is that it has a bunch of allegations that are impossible to disprove. And that's not the way that justice is supposed to be done in this country, where you say, well, if you're innocent, you have to prove that these things never happened. These are a bunch of wild allegations without evidence to support them, and we are now years into this.
No, you're right.
And it's
I mean, that's the standard we apply to Supreme Court justices, but not to anyone else. Molly Hemingway, great to see you. Thank you for that.
Great to be here with you.
For your rigorous look at that.